It was such a beautiful night. A usual summer night. The stars were visibly seen radiating and shining in the sky. As I stopped and looked through my right shoulder, there was this breeze that gently brushed across my face and announced the summer to my ears. I drove all the ways from Tehran to Mashhad. I never stopped while driving through the towns between Tehran to Mashhad. A driver was expected to take me to the venue of the competition as the road was too dark, eerie, and dangerous for a woman to pass by at night. In the past, I have heard different accounts of ladies passing that way at night only to come out with unwholesome stories. Women are then advised not to pass through or be around that way at night. These were the pieces of advice I had to take seriously. I took the car to the nearest parking lot located at Hosseин's workplace. As soon as I got to his office, I hugged him tightly, and as I tried to wrap my hands around him, I felt like he had gained weight during these years. It's been 2 years that I haven't seen him. A brother and sister not talking for 2 years is a usual story. Hossein's wife was jealous of me when she heard about my coming. I mean, this was always her story. She's always jealous of me, and that wouldn't change even when we haven't seen in 2 years. At his workplace, Hossein's driver was waiting for me with a gray Peugeot Pars. Hossein said, "He will stay with you the night. The road is dangerous, and it's in the middle of the desert. I can't come myself." I took a grape from the fruit plate on the conference table and quipped, "Are you worried about me? You still don't believe that I have grown up, do you?" He stepped away from his table and stealthily walked towards my seat and pulled a chair he hasn't quite seated when he ordered me to sit. I sat on the chair he had pulled out for me. I put my hands together. I made the gesture of the fist and palm like those old days he used to advise me, and I used to count to 10 until he was finished. He used to stand upright next to me. He took my hands and said, "Don't count for once, and just listen." I put my hands in his and said, "I'm listening." He said, "Helia wants a divorce. She wants to take Armin with her to Canada. So I am getting all the official paperwork for them." I was shocked. He could tell by just looking at me. I said, "I'm sorry." He said, "Don't be. Just listen to me carefully. You are the only memory left for me that I love unconditionally. I love you, so I have all the right to be worried about you. I don't know how your beloved husband could let you come in the middle of the desert." I laughed at his handsome face that has become old now. His beard had turned white, and little wrinkles under his eyes were more than before. His eyes were no more shining and not smiling. I said, "He is a modern man and respects my choices." I looked down. Hossein took his hand out of mine and said, "I got you a plane ticket for tomorrow night." I said, "What do I do with my car?" He said, "I will personally bring it for you at Tehran. You'll get tired, and it's dangerous to drive after an overnight driving and not sleeping." I said, "But I won't be driving." He was standing behind his office window, looking at the dry view in front of him. He certainly did not look, because the view was not spectacular. He lit his cigarette and said, "Please take me seriously for once, Raha. Now, I need you more than ever. I have so many unsaid things. I want to spend so many days with you to compensate for the days I wasn't there. So, I want you to arrive safely in Tehran for my sake." So don't you say, no. This is a modern way of talking. Will you listen to me, please? By the way, Mahmoudi has been waiting for you for so long. You should go now. I put you in a sleeping bag too, and lots of things to eat. Take care of yourself and come back soon. Hossein was different. I did not think Hilda's departure would confuse him so much. On his marriage day, we were both standing on the veranda of our mother's house, facing the mountain. He didn't even look at me, he just said, I wish you didn't go, Raha, so I wouldn't have to give in to an unwanted thing to destroy myself and another beautiful soul. He was messed up now, which didn't have any connection with what he said that day. It's been 2 years that we didn't know anything about each other. After what happened at Dad's funeral, I thought I should take my distance. I thought he should be alone with Hilda and Armin. This anxiety was frustrating for Hilda, and Hossein's treatment at Father's funeral was an insult to me being a woman. I haven't realized why he was so much angry at me that day. We were at the funeral. He was hugging me and staying at a side. Then he opened his mouth and said, Don't cry, Raha. I'll be your father, your mother, your everything. I looked at him and replied, Don't say that. Hilda is looking at us. Poor she. You know how sensitive she is. He cut in and said, It doesn't matter. I looked at him as if it was the last time I was going to see him. I said, Hossein, I will take care of myself. I promise. You too, promise that this divorce will make you a better person. So let's talk about it more. He came closer and opened his arms and hugged me. He smelled different. Like the smile in his eyes. I came out of the room and took the stairs to the parking. Mr. Mahmoudi stepped out of the car to open the rear seat door for me. I didn't let him. I said, I will open it myself. Hossein was standing behind the car. He was holding a bowl filled with water and rose petals in it to pour behind me. It's been 2 years that I decided that he understood this independence and be with his own family. He owed this to my young and adolescent days. Of course, he was impatient at first and it was hard. Maybe it was my fault. I didn't talk to him straightforwardly. But he didn't listen. From the time Mom and I were insisting that Hossein gets married, she was cold and indifferent. She was arrogant, but she loved Hossein. I could tell by looking at her eyes. In Dad's funeral, if Hossein was not taking so much care of me and didn't somehow throw Hilda out so obviously, my relationship with her would have been better. He was sad about my sadness more than he was sad about Dad's death, which made her so angry. When she was coming to us, she said, Will you let Hossein go, Raha? Along the way, Mr. Mahmoudi was silent and the sound of Shajarian had made the atmosphere sad. I could never stand Shajarian for long. I put headphones in my ears, and the sound of music distracted me. It was dark outside, as if it was only us and the sky. My eyes closed and I fell asleep. I woke up with Mr. Mahmoudi's voice. We had arrived. All the astronomical camps were tented at regular intervals. And all were aimed at the sky with their telescopes. I went to Mr. Sarmati, the head of that place, and showed him the letter. He looked at me indifferently and sealed the letter and told me that I had to be in the last camp along with other journalists. I thanked him and took my stuff to the camp. It was the worst position ever. But only the inscription was thanks to Hossein, who was acquainted with the executive head of the competitions, or else I wouldn't have any place there whatsoever. When he did it for me and made a reservation, he called and said, "I don't understand what you are going to do there, and why you came up with astrology. It's a good place anyway." Mehdi said it's a good place. He is head and responsible. He'll be there to observe things closely. When I arrived at the tent, I looked inside and saw there was a backpack at every corner. It meant that that place is taken for someone else. She will be sleeping there. I put my backpack, my sleeping bag, and the food somewhere next to the fabric wall where there was a square in the form of a window. The existence of a window in the middle of the dark desert would make no difference. I came out of the tent and went to Mr. Mahmoudi and asked him to go back to Mashhad and come to pick me up in the following morning. He looked at me and said, "Ms. Razai, I have been working with the engineer for years now. Don't make me lose my job. The engineer told me to stay with you and not to move." I laughed at him and told him, "The engineer has forgotten that I am a 40-year-old woman. It's up to you. I thought you'd be tired in the car." "As long as I'm concerned, it's fine." I was upset with Hossein. He sent this old man in the middle of nowhere just to stay with me. But desert nights were so beautiful that I forgot about everything in no time. I put the chair in a safe place and started staring at the sky with a small telescope I had with me. I took out my notebook and started writing under the starlight. "I am the bright star of the desert, my mirage. Don't be a rivulet in me, so that I become watered. And enlighten the sky with light rain." Looking down, I was busy writing as the fading sounds around were incomprehensible to me. Here and there were large circles. And girls and boys were gathering around a telescope. They had a big chart and wrote star and planets' names on it. I didn't get any of it. I just knew that there is a national astrological competition for knowing the stars in the heart of the desert. It was dark and I couldn't recognize faces. Everybody seemed the same. Every once in a while, somebody went back to the tent to grab a bite to eat and returned by the crowd. I took out the headphones and put them in my ears. I turned the music up and got back to work. A slight stroke on my shoulder jolted me back to reality from my fantasy. I looked up and saw a face. I took off the headphones and said to the face, "You scared me." "Is there anything I can do to help?" he said. "Ms. Raha, it's me, Mehdi, the head of this competition. A friend of Razai engineer." I said, "Oh, you have changed so much. I didn't recognize you. Of course, you came all of a sudden." I reached for his hands, and we shook hands. "Thanks for the opportunity you gave me, plus for letting me in," he replied. "No problem. I wanted to come and see you in person, and if you have any problems, I'll be at your service. Please save my cell phone number in yours. Whenever you need me, just text me." I took out my cell phone and saved his number and asked him, "What is your last name?" He was astounded and asked, "Are you always short of memory?" I said, "Do I have to always remember your last name?" He said, "Do you even remember me?" I said, as long as I remember, yes. You are my brother's friend. And you have been working in the ship transportations with the engineer in the Farahava company that Hossein had registered. Am I right? He said. You remember business details, but not that business trip you came with Hossein as his counselor. I replied, I remember. But the details? Not at all. He said nothing. He said, I'm Marabi Madam Razai, Mehdi Marabi. OMG. When he said his last name, I remembered. What did he expect? It's been 10 years. Why did he remember everything in detail? I was about to say, I remember that he left. I put my cell phone back in my bag when I saw a text message coming from Hossein. May your night be full of stars, my freest of all, Raha. I sent him good night and silent my cell phone. I wasn't in the mood to be disturbed by any noise. I wanted to put my thoughts and ideas in order and plan my new decision. As I was there, I realized there was no silence better than the silence of the desert. That night, the desert and I made history together. I sat outside the tent and wrapped myself with a large blanket. The headphones in my ears and my eyes looking at the sky, as if the sky roof had become shorter. I have always heard people saying that desert nights bring stars closer to people on earth, as if it wants to let everyone pick a star. I looked away from the sky and opened my notebook. I found an old painting in my notebook. It dated back to 15 years ago. I have drawn Hossein and myself, but I didn't remember. Underneath, I had written to the most handsome brother in the world. I remember Hossein again. I took my cell phone and looked at it. It didn't make any sense. This person was different from the brother I knew 2 years ago. He had become strange. I put the cell phone away and continued with my reports, looking down as the light reflected right on my notebook. The light music made the night prettier. I didn't realize Mr. Marabi was there. He came across a plate of food. He bent and sat in front of my three-legged chair and handed me the plate. I took out the headphones and thanked him. He looked at my notebook and said, "Are you still writing?" I didn't remember telling him anything about my texts. Without a doubt, I said, "How do you know?" He stood up, smiled, turned his back to me, and said, "I know a lot, Ms. Razai. Maybe even things you don't remember." I said, "It's Hossein's fault. He can't keep a secret." He turned to me and said, "You are a smart woman. Please don't pretend that you have forgotten about that night's conversation. The conversation we had on the same trip that changed my destiny forever. Why did I forget things? Why couldn't I remember?" I doubted myself, my words, the trip 10 years ago. I stood up from my three-legged chair, went to Marabi, and stood beside him. He was looking at the sky. He turned to me. I looked into his eyes and said, "Believe it or not, I remember nothing. Please remind me. I am confused. I feel like this trip is lost somewhere in my mind. Sleeping maybe. I don't know. I just know that I don't get any of what you are saying." I turned to him completely. Now the moonlight was on his face and his eyes were making some statement which I couldn't really understood. Purple sweater with a white shirt underneath. Beautiful color combination, but I thought it didn't suit that atmosphere. It was too formal and too chic, as if he is invited to a very important business meeting. His voice turned into a whisper. Don't you remember we went out of town because you wanted to try something you had never tried before? I said. No. Not at all, he said. You wanted to try marijuana for the first time. So Hossein asked me to get you the best so we could smoke and have fun. I remembered a little bit that we went out of town. But I didn't remember the details. I remembered the next day, though. I said, that night, I just remember the road and I think I fell asleep. Because when I woke up in the morning, Hossein hurriedly told me to leave. No matter how many times I asked him why, he wouldn't budge, so he told me nothing. Due to the level of my dizziness, I remember nothing, he said. You fell asleep on the road and you didn't wake up. Marabi turned his back to me as if he was disappointed or wanting to hid something from me. He said, Raha, darling, you didn't sleep that night. But I cannot tell you what happened. Maybe Hossein thinks you shouldn't know. I laughed out loud, then said, well done you too. You too tell me what is good for me. I said things that have changed you, and after that trip, Hossein decided to get married all of a sudden. With who? Hilda, with whom he couldn't even talk. So, Mr. Marabi, have courage and talk or I won't see you again. I went to the tent and packed the three-legged chair. It was my intention to pack up everything else too and leave, but I thought about the driver. Poor him. He already had enough of Hossein. I opened the sleeping bag and slid into it. I closed the tent too. I didn't want to see anything else. I closed my eyes and tried to remember that night. I couldn't remember a thing. I had to talk to Hossein the first thing I met him. I had said things I shouldn't have. I opened my eyes and looked through the small window on the roof of the tent. The sunlight was on my face. I took my cell phone and looked at the time. It was 7:50 a.m. I missed the desert sunrise. I was too tired and messed up. I remembered last night's conversation, but it wasn't a good time to think about it now. I got up and packed my sleeping bag, then went out of the tent looking around. It wasn't like last night. There were no more telescopes there, and the tents were half empty. The pang of hunger was starting to be felt in my stomach, so I started touching my stomach, which meant I was hungry. I had to find something to eat, but I preferred not to meet Marabi again. I went to the tent. I found a bread and cheese sandwich among Hossein's food in my backpack. I wanted tea, so I came out of the tent to look for Mahmoudi. I thought he might have tea. Marabi was standing by the tent with another set of clothes. I was astonished. His clothing didn't match the environment. I thought he was invited to go somewhere or something. As always, I couldn't control myself. I asked, "Have you been invited?" He smiled and handed me a glass of tea. He said, "I'm heading to my office, Ms. Raha. I have a meeting with petroleum company for transportation and loading petrol." I replied, "I don't have time to go home and change. So much explanation for a simple question." I said, "Thanks for your explanation." He said, "Have breakfast," with relief. "We will go back together." Last night I sent Mr. Mahmoudi home. I got angry this time. Finally, I looked up and told him, "Haven't you learned that you have to consult me first? I am responsible for myself and I don't like it that people make decisions for me. Hossein sent a bodyguard with me and now you changed my bodyguard." He gave me a look. A kind of look that was worse than 100 curse. He paused a bit. A spark hit my mind. I remembered that he separated from me with the same look in his eyes. That night, 10 years ago. His last words repeated in my mind, "Raha, darling, feel free and do whatever you like. This is your right." I felt fed up with his silence and my bad memory, and the fact that Hossein changed from that night on. After my marriage, he grew apart. The distance he had taken from me was even greater after his wedding. The night I decided to free myself and run away from Mom, who controlled me so much, from Dad, who was too indifferent about me, and from Hossein, who used to pick on me all the time. I had no other choice but to marry the first person that comes along. It was a repetitive cliché of marrying without love. But it didn't turn out a cliché. This time, it was pure reality. A reality that changed my adulthood so fast. Sohail was a good man, quiet and rational, but indifferent and cold. He didn't see me, maybe that was good for the first years, but little by little, I realized that marriage is about sympathy. How interesting it was. I got married first and then I tried to find a meaning for it. Like now, I wanted to experience astrology first and then look for its theoretical foundations. I packed up my stuff and we went to Mehdi's car. The only good thing was that his car was comfortable. It suited his clothing style. I quickly got inside his car and the car smelled like burnt wood, like winter in the middle of the summer. It was clean, like mine. I found it surprising. Why did I not know this person until now? He got in and we moved. As we were going away, he said, "You choose the music so you won't have to use headphones." I asked, "You paid a lot of attention to me, didn't you?" It was the first time that I was looking carefully at his face. He had a bony face, his cheeks were angles, and his forehead was long. His beard and mustache were buckwheat and trimmed. It was as if he had used a hairdryer. His eyes were light brown and the delicate skin under his eyes appeared sunken and hollow. But his eyes were talking like an unwritten book, which made him attractive. I said to myself, why haven't I seen Mehdi like this before? I looked away and chose Gugush. In a stone wall, there are 2 captive windows, 2 tireds, 2 alones. One is you, one is me. The wall is made of black stone, cold and hard rock. Silence locks into our tired lips. Mehdi whispered and sang along. I said, "Do you like it, or shall I change it?" He laughed and calmly said to me, "Don't tease me, Ms. Raha." I said, I was serious. He said, "I love Gugush, especially this song." I said, "So, you are captivated by the wall like one of the windows." Without looking at me, he said, "It's been 10 years, my ear rang. Something wasn't right and this was making me crazy. As soon as I get to Mashhad, I have to talk to Hossein." I felt this man was hiding a secret from me, his eyes, his words. I got angry at myself because I didn't understand and never even felt it. But of course, I was away from Hossein for 2 years, and the last time I saw Mehdi was 10 years ago. Why did these people become like that? Why are they so complicated? Why don't they say what they have to say at the right time? Why don't they realize that people can't guess what they mean? Interesting. Men think this is a feminine characteristic. Women usually like the person they love to guess their words, thoughts, and mentality, and that is the biggest way of blocking a relationship. I wanted to listen to what Hossein had to say first and then talk to Mehdi. But I couldn't wait. I was going crazy. I waited a little bit, and while looking through the window, I spoke out loudly, "You were wrong. Words should be said, and you kept silent. You took the opportunity away from yourself, and the window stuck in the wall." He turned to me and said, "Raha," I said, "Yes, I told you 10 years ago that we should remove this stone wall. So, what was the answer that is still bothering you?" I didn't hear an answer. He wasn't alert. "You should have told me when I wasn't intoxicated, when I was alert." "You were a child, or what?" He looked away. Now, I was sure that something must have happened that night. But something was incomprehensible. Whatever had happened, why didn't anyone say anything about it? I didn't get this complexity and secret keeping. Honestly, I wasn't in the mood or have the time to hear the words that Mehdi had preferred to keep from me for 10 years. I didn't say anything else. I took my notebook out of my bag and started writing. Over me that night, there was a feeling of running away from any conversation whatsoever. Now that I wasn't allowed to use headphones, I had better take refuge in words. Hossein was waiting for me in his office, sitting at his computer desk so he could see me in full glare. I was standing by the door pretending that I was about to leave. He got up, came to me, and pulled a chair next to the door, and said, "Sit. Take some rest. I will take you to the airport myself." I didn't want to look at him. I was upset. Not because of his 10-year-old silence. Probably it was better like that since he accompanied me with Mehdi on a trip. He should have asked my opinion. He was standing beside me. He put his hands on my shoulders. I moved my shoulder, so he took his hand off me. He was so aback that he bent down, stared at me, and asked boldly, "What happened to you, Raha?" I said, "Why did you make me travel with Mehdi? This shameless guy knows something about our trip for the town construction project that I don't remember. Why didn't you tell me? Who is he anyway?" I burst into tears. I felt like choking during the drive, and now it was all coming out. Hossein pulled another chair and sat next to me. He took a handkerchief out of the box and wanted to wipe my tears himself. I didn't let him. I took the handkerchief instead and wiped my tears. His silence was tormenting. He didn't say a word and just looked at me. I said, "Hossein, whatever happened, it was 10 years ago. Why did you do something to enlighten the fire under the ashes?" He stood up and went straight to the window. As he moved towards the window, I stayed behind him and could hear him breathing. As his back was at me, he whispered, "Even if another 10 years pass, it does not seem to have passed." I stood up and went to him. Behind the window, there was a ruin. Not a dazzling landscape. But he was dazzled. I looked at him and said, "Talk to me, Hossein. You should talk." He looked away and said, We will talk when it's time. You have a flight to catch at 8. Let's go. I don't want you to be late. I will bring your car at the end of the week. Will you be okay without your car? I said, yes, I can commute by Sohail's car. He frowned and said, at least don't bring up his name or conversation. It makes me sick, I said. Hossein, what's your problem with Sohail? He wouldn't harm a fly. He looked at me with a strange facial expression. It was such a bad look. One of those looks that speak 1,000 words in different ways. But in his eyes, there was neither anger nor hatred. His eyes were regretting something, and I didn't understand that. I was curious to know, but what was this look in his eyes? That was the strangest thing on this trip. I said, I should buy saffron and barberry for Mom. Sudaib wanted strained yogurt. Let's go to Hajj Saftar's shop. He has taken care of everything. I called and ordered everything. Hossein went to the door and said, I'll be waiting for you in the parking. I sat in the car. After the shopping, he didn't say a word until we got to the airport. He didn't even look at me. Then, when the time came to say goodbye, he said, I'll come at the end of the week, but I'll go to Lavasan Villa. I'll give you your car, then you come and take me there. Life was going on so fast that I almost forgot the memory of the desert. I was so preoccupied with Parisa and Nahal that I had no time to revise the past or to make it even better. But Hossein had become a new concern in my mind. He had become isolated, or rather depressed. He didn't talk. Even when we went to Lavasan Villa, he didn't want me near him. I understood him somehow. He needed to be alone. Hilda had made a sudden decision. Of course, I hadn't heard her part of the story. I had to call her. I picked up the phone and dialed her number. After a few rings, she picked up and I was horrified. I was so horrified because I really had nothing to say. I didn't expect her to pick up. Hi Hilda, darling. Hi, Raha. Wonders never end. How come you called me? She was upset. Maybe she was right. Even from the beginning, I had no intention to interfere with their life. I said, sorry I was busy with my life and kids, I couldn't ask about you. When will you leave? I heard Armin talking on the other end. Auntie, we'll leave at the end of the week. I haven't hugged you yet. I was shocked. I said, Hilda, when will you come to Tehran? Isn't your flight departing from here? No Raha, we will leave from Mashhad to Istanbul and from there to Toronto. So, I won't be seeing you? Didn't Hossein tell you our flight date? I was angry. But I didn't want to say that I don't have any news about Hossein, that he doesn't pick my calls. I said, I lost the time Hilda. I will get on the first flight tonight and I'll be there. I heard Armin laughing, saying hooray. Auntie, please bring Nahal too. I want to hug her too. I said, I can't. I'll be there alone. You'll come soon, or maybe. We will come there soon. Armin said nothing, but his silence was like Parisa's. He said his words in silence. I said, I will try Armin. But Nahal has to go to school, darling. He didn't say a word and said goodbye. I hung up and called Hossein. He picked up this time. He was about to say something that I interrupted. Don't you feel ashamed? You didn't tell me Hilda's flight date. Should I hear it from here? Didn't you want me to say goodbye to them and hug Armin? I was talking like a complaining chatterbox. Hossein listened. Suddenly, I said, "Are you there?" I stopped talking. I heard him. "Hi darling, Raha. She didn't want you to see her. She didn't let me tell you." There was silence. I said nothing. And he didn't say anything. I said, "Hossein, you had to think about me and tell me." He said, "I was thinking about you when I didn't tell you. I didn't want her to insult you. You know her. She will keep her word if she says something." I said, "I was talking to her now." I said I'll be there tonight, and she said nothing. Hossein coughed, and he had a frog in his throat. "She doesn't tell you things. She is calling me now. She wants me to tell you not to come, but I will, Hossein. Come, darling. I missed you. I will buy you tickets. Give me an hour." I hung up the phone. Why did Hilda hate me so much? I wasn't a bad sister-in-law for her. Not even a little bit. I had not harmed her during these years. I decided to take Nahal with me. Armin wanted to see Nahal, and I didn't want to travel alone. I asked Nahal to come with me. She frowned. "Can I not? I like to see Armin too, but I don't feel comfortable at Uncle's. We won't have any place to sleep. Nahal, darling, you may not be able to see him again for years," she said. "Mom, haven't you forgotten?" I hadn't seen him for 2 years. I froze. I was in complete shock. When did she grow up that she could look at things so logically? I hugged her and said, "You're right. Do as you wish, baby." As she was going, I looked at her and felt proud. I had brought her up like a self-confident person. I called Hossein and got the tickets for myself only. I told her about Nahal. He said, "She's right, but I could get her a room in a hotel." I said, "No, she won't come. I'm not going to force her. I will come, but I'll stay in a hotel." Hossein said, "Okay." I, myself, live in a hotel, too. I was shocked again. I said, "Why Hossein? Why in a hotel?" He said, "Hilda is selling the house. She wants to take the money with herself. The transaction will happen at the end of the week. I took my stuff and am staying in a hotel until the new apartment gets ready." I said, "Hossein, Hilda hates me so much just because you protect the family so much. It's all your fault. How many times should I tell you that she is and always has to be your priority, not us?" There was no sound coming from the other end. I said, "Did you hear me?" He said, "I heard you. Do you know where I am now, Raha?" I said, "Where?" He said, "Torgaby. I came here like the other time, when you had just got your driver's license. Do you remember?" I said, "Yes." He said, "I am having dinner in the Sofarkane we went to that day. To the best of my recollection, after I gave you a gift, you were so happy, you cried. I can never forget that. I wanted to give you the whole world, but you wanted to stand on your own feet. I wanted to love you so much, but you wanted to be independent and make your own life without my support. Do you remember?" I paused. I remembered it good. The day I received my driver's license, Hossein brought me a present. He made me very happy, but I hated so much attention. I knew that his excessive attention would limit me. I remember very well that whenever I had to try something new, or go out with my friends or do something as a legally grown-up girl without taking permission, he would always stop me with some sweet excuses. He pretended he was worried about me and that whatever he was doing was because he loved me. I had told him 1,000 times that love is freedom. I remember that scene very well. I got his beautiful present and I cried. I was both happy and sad at the same time. I was happy because of so much attention and affection, and sad because he controlled me and limited me so much. I was in a dilemma. I was wondering and trying to figure out how could it be possible to hurt someone you love. I tried so much to put myself in his shoes and understand him. I just couldn't understand him. Why did he put so much pressure on me? He was so jealous. This superstition was in our blood but seemed modern. He used to say, "Dad doesn't know what a diamond you are, but I do." Every time I tried to talk about it with Dad, he pushed around the bush. Dad was not as jealous as he was. He was purely indifferent. The relationship between Dad and Hossein could have been the cause of all this. Still, I didn't realize where my place was. Finally, after a long silence, I said, "Hossein, you are beating around the bush. I understand. I'll see you tonight. I want to talk to you." He said, "Raha, let's talk after Hilda left. I promise we will talk. I want to tell you a lot of things. All the things that made me decide for you." I was on pins and needles. Now that I was ready to take a big step in life, I couldn't stand the pressure on me. I wanted it to be postponed to a few more years later. He had waited all these years. He can wait one more year. Now, I was thinking of bigger things. To attain my goals, I needed to concentrate. I had Nahal and Parisa. I had to think with an open mind. When I talked to Nahal that day, I realized that she had changed so fast. Parisa, on the other hand, always keeps silent. I wish she could just shout. I was afraid of all this silence and decency. I remember that I also preferred silence to loudness. I ran away instead of staying and solving the problems. I didn't have any time for Hossein and his secrets now. I said, "Let me talk first, Hossein. Let me tell you about myself. It's been 2 years that you haven't seen me and are unaware of what has happened to me. You listen to me first. Your secrets have waited all these years. Wait a bit more. This time, I want to take a big step with my willpower. Let your secrets be. Tell me about them when I find my place in my new dream." He laughed out loud and said, "It is you. You haven't changed a bit. It has always been about you first. First of all. Your priorities. Your big steps. Your love. Do you remember what you said when you decided to get married?" I said, "Yes. You wanted to tell me about your decisions too, but you heard mine first and then you told me about yours." This time, he shouted, "Raha, I didn't say anything. When you said about your plans, I didn't talk anymore. Don't you remember? I was silent. I could not remember. Perhaps he had said it, but I didn't remember it. It should have been about the university, or work, or Dad. I said, we don't have time for this. I don't know why you are like this. If you had something to say, you should have said it. Words should be spoken. It is not my fault that you didn't, because you felt it is not right to say it or didn't want to say it. Hossein said, let's talk when you're ready. If you don't want to come, I won't buy tickets. I said, don't be a child. Don't mix everything. Buy me tickets. I'll be staying a week. I want to remember the time I was there. Sure, darling. I will book a room in the same hotel I'm staying in. I promise I won't bother you. Just promise me one thing. Say it, Hilda bites. Let me come with you so she won't say anything bad to you. Are you afraid that I won't be able to defend myself? I'm not afraid. Hilda is traumatized. Why is she traumatized? Hossein, you know her. No, I don't. You didn't let me get close to her, and I still don't know why. The phone was shaking in my hand. I don't know why, I became empty all of a sudden. I wanted the earth to open up her mouth, so I can just sink into it and take some rest and then come back. Like those times I used to take a walk from Shoku Institute to the house, but Hossein was like a shadow. He always followed me with his car. I ignored him. I felt the weight of that shadow more than ever. It was even heavier than school and university days. I said, see you tonight, Hossein. I won't ask you not to come to the airport, because I know you won't listen. Silence. Hossein said, I won't come, Raha. I will send the driver to pick you up. I said, I will take a taxi myself. You wanted me to be modern, okay. But you can't come in a taxi. I did not have the patience to argue. This subject was not worth it. I didn't have the power to fight for my primal rights. I said, okay. Okay. I'll see you tonight. I'll tell you when I get there. I hung up the phone. I came to the window. It was smoke as far as the eye could see. The weather felt sad. Subcutaneous grief. As soon as I opened the window, it would pound on my heart, on every spot. I had a memory with this house, and every spot I didn't have any. I touched the curtains. I had to return and wash the curtains. I didn't remember when was the last time I washed them. It was an alarm for me. I had to clean the whole house every year. Next to the sofa, in the corner of the fireplace on the floor were Nahal's clothes. I picked them up and arranged the red cushion with sequins on the sofa. I closed my notebook at the table and lit the fireplace. Dust was sitting on the family photo above the fireplace. Looking around the room, I saw a tissue on the side of the three-seater sofa in the middle of the living room. I immediately picked it up and used it to dust the picture. The photo was related to a trip to Shiraz a few years ago. Spring Garden. The garden owner was one of Sohail's friends, who ironically knew Hossein too. All roads lead to Hossein. In the photo, we were all smiling. I well remember how bad that trip was for me. It was supposed to be a family trip. But Sohail didn't have the power to say no. We had to go to his friend's garden. which of course was very beautiful. They gave us a warm welcome. But the trip was supposed to refresh me after working hard and messing with Nahal and Parisa. The trip turned into a night party and dancing instead of resting in silence, silently reading books. Shaheen took the photo. The owner of the garden, Sohail's friend, who ironically knew Hossein. We were all smiling at the camera. But my smile was out of anger. The corner of my eye was half open in the photo. No one but myself understood that my smile was artificial. I cleaned the photo and put it back. I looked in the mirror above the fireplace, with its golden frame. I had ordered the frame from Isfahan's shopping mall. How long it took them to get the frame ready, so I'll be able to get to a class I had in Tehran on the first flight. The golden frame no longer shines. But its beauty was still visible from afar. I looked in the mirror. My eyes were tired. Not ordinary fatigue. Bored and sad. Uncertainty. It was as if I was lost in the middle of a long, narrow road. I was hesitant. I looked away from the mirror and went to the kitchen. To order this kitchen, I cooked for 20 days on picnic gas. The cabinet maker did not do his job on time. I was too obsessed with my cabinets. And Sohail was so indifferent about it. I remember it all. When the cabinets were finally ready, I cried tears of joy. I liked the design of my kitchen so much I jumped and cheered. I liked the harmony between the cabinet's color and the stone on the kitchen cabinets and the electrical appliances. The arrangement of my kitchenware in the cabinets. I bought the stone on kitchen cabinets with Ziba. She was a friend from university. When I came to Tehran to study at Shahid Beheshti University, I saw Ziba. We became friends. She had good taste and above all, she was patient. She was always ready to go shopping with me. She was an interesting girl. She was reserved and shy, but kind and intimate. She had a simple and ordinary life. She was the only child. She was the fruit of her mother's second marriage. She didn't talk much, which was her biggest advantage as a friend of mine. The day we ordered the stone on kitchen cabinets, she was wearing a long dark blue coat with a yellow scarf. When she came to pick me up, she said, "Raha, take it easy. You will burn out." "Why so much obsession?" I said. "I spend most of my time in the kitchen." "It has to turn out good, Ziba," she said. "Then why so much obsession for the rooms? The carpet, the curtain, and the walls." She had never been so straightforward to me before. I said, "I don't know. I just know that everything has to be perfect." She said nothing that day. But before she left for Switzerland, when we went to her goodbye party at Nabe Restaurant in Sea Park, she was sitting by the window facing Valusuresti. This window was on the ground floor, the same double table we had to book so many days before, and she was playing with her food, the Scholzard, when she looked up and said to me, "Raha, you are obsessed because you are dissatisfied. Find out what you are dissatisfied about. It'll make you feel better. I have known you for years and you know that I don't talk much, but you need help to achieve your goals and big dreams. This obsession will destroy you. I remember very well. I wasn't looking at her when she was talking to me. She wasn't the first one to give me such an advice. But she was the first whose advice was important to me, and she knew it. Whenever I'm in the kitchen doing something, I remember her. I should call her. I haven't talked to her since her birthday. I was so busy. Since she left, she has become different. When Zeba left, I missed her so much that I was depressed for a long. Zeba was with me when Hossein got married. She was with me when Daddy died, but not anymore. Now that I want to arrange my life, she's not there. I have to make a phone call. I have to write this so I won't forget about it. I took a large cup of tea from the cabinet above the sink. There was a picture of Nahal and me imprinted on it, laughing. It was a souvenir from Malaysia. A trip we had with Mom and Dad. Sohail was not with us. He didn't want to be around Mom, couldn't stand her, but his pretext was that he had lots of work to do in the company. I poured the tea I made into a mug. I said to myself, "You are my darling. Whatever I pick has a story." Those magenta spoons and forks, that carpet tableau and chandeliers. The carpet in Paris's bedroom. The painting above Nahal's bed. The painting above the guest bathroom. Bed sheets and the cushion of my bedroom. The same obsession made it a story to buy any of my belongings. I hold the mug of tea in my hands. Its steam was touching the tip of my frozen nose. I went to my office by the kitchen. I sat at the table. I pulled back the curtain. Although it was cloudy, I needed the natural light to concentrate. I opened my notebook and continued. Once I picked up a pen to start, my cell phone rang. It was Suri. I didn't want to answer, but I had to. I had to tell him about my trip. I picked up. There was so much noise on the other end that Sohail's voice was like the voice of a hostess giving some advice in case of an emergency. "Hello, Raha. Can you hear me?" I said loudly. "Yes, where are you?" He said, "Shaheen, Faramars, and I are going to the Lava Sand Villa." "Are the keys still behind the door?" I said. Hossein was the last person who was there. "I don't know. I'll ask him." "Why are you going there?" "Why now?" "Without a program," he said. "I don't know." Shaheen wanted to go there. Hossein told him. "Just ask Hossein and let me know." "There's too much noise here. I can't talk to you." "Text me." I hung up and texted him, "I'm going to Mashhad. Hilda and Armin are leaving this weekend. I'll be back in a week though. The kids will stay home. Go home sooner if you can." Then I looked at my cell phone to see how fast he would answer. I was sure that he was going to send me a short answer. Here it came. "Okay. Tell Mom to stay with them tonight. I'll be here for about 3 or 4 days." I stared at my cell phone screen. The background was Nahal and Parisa laughing. It was last year's trip to the north of Iran. By the road, they were making snow butterflies and laughing. The message he had sent was not in harmony with the picture. I had to change the background picture. But I didn't have any picture that could match my current mood. I dialed Hossein's number, but then I regretted it. I texted him instead, "Have you put the keys to the villa at the same place?" He responded very fast, "Yes, and I have told Shaheen about it." I called Mom. I was really angry at Sohail for making me ask Mom while I didn't want to do so. Now I had to give her a lot of explanations about why, what happened, why Sohail is not there, why I'll be going alone, what gift I am taking for them, etc. She picked up late. Her voice was as always. At first, a bit down, because she wanted to see what's what. She wanted to see whether she should project the feeling of guilt onto me or not. I said, "Sorry, I called without any notice. I am going to Mashhad to say goodbye to Hilda and Armin. Sohail is going to Lavasan Villa. Girls would be safer if you were around them." She paused, and when she finally talked, she had a frog in her throat. "Okay, but bring them here." "I can't come there." I said, "You know them, Mom. They are not comfortable there. They want to be in our own house." She said, "I can't, Raha. I have a guest." I said, "Who?" "They'll be gone by the night, I guess." She said, "She will stay the night. Aunt Fariba is here." Chapter 4. When I got to the airport, I sent a message to Sohail telling him that Mom had finally agreed to go to our place, but that he had to get home as soon as he could. I don't want to feel indebted to her. He didn't answer. The flight was delayed. I sat and opened the new book I had just bought. I wrote the beginning, the autumn, Mehrabad Airport, Tehran to Mashhad. The time passed by really fast. I got on the plane. I was only an hour and a half away. All my memories of hiking. I wanted to go to the university bookstore. Maybe it was the book in my hand that overwhelmed me again with the moments, and I went to the Palestinist bookstore along with Shadi, Tirana, and Ghazal. Hossein was always there, waiting for me like a shadow. I always thought that he might be into Ghazal, and he was always taking care of me. But no, he was only taking care of me. I thought he was taking care of me excessively. Palestinist bookstore never had the books I needed. But it was good. There was a hamburger shop near the bookstore. Thanks to Hossein, every time my friends and I went there, everyone else would go out and the shop became deserted. Ghazal used to say, "Raha, tell Hossein to come and sit with us. People will think we have some kind of issue." I remember when I got back home that day, I opened the door and shouted, "Mom, please don't send Hossein to be with me. Doesn't he have work to do? He is just like a shadow. And he doesn't even live here with us anymore." Mom came out of the kitchen wearing a pair of yellow gloves. She pushed the hair on her forehead with his arm and told me quietly, "Why are you shouting? Daddy is sleeping. Hossein was here for lunch. He told us that he had seen you with your friends. I said, so, he is a mobile news agency now. He always does that, Mom said. He brought you some bags. He put them in your room. Go and check it out. That was the reason he came. I took the stairs, 2 at a time. I wanted to get to my bedroom upstairs. I remembered that I didn't take my backpack with me. I returned. It was on the couch at the entrance. I got my backpack. Mom was still standing there. She was watching my movements in surprise. I said, sorry, I shouted. I was angry because he is always there. Mom said, Raha, please talk to Hossein. This is the best possible way. I told you 1,000 times. You should talk to each other. I understand what you are saying, but you know this city. People talk, you know. It's good that someone is taking care of you. I grinned at Mom. Now that I remember that scene, my grin still looks the same. After so many years, I still grin, remembering that conversation. I know my mother did not know how to do a better job. If she did, she wouldn't have encouraged my marriage to Sohail the day he came to ask for my hand. From the beginning, my mother was a submissive woman, a kind of dictatorial submission. Maybe Dad's indifference made her like that, or maybe it was Grandpa's dictatorship. He was a military soldier. Whatever the reason, I had no other choice but to run away. She liked talking. She didn't like others to talk while she listened. That was the most painful part of her. As I heard the flight attendant, I was thrown out of my usual fantasies. She seemed familiar. I smiled and said, have I seen you somewhere? The flight attendant showed all her white teeth with a smile. She bent with a black tray in front of me and said, Madam Razai, Razai's always buy tickets to flights that I am attending. I remembered, Layden Tussi. A friend of Hossein's co-worker in Fareva Company. I first saw her at Arsham's place. She was her girlfriend for a while. I said, oh, Layden, you are prettier than ever. I didn't buy the ticket, my brother did. I wonder how he has access to the list of flight attendants, while she was putting a glass of water in front of me. She looked at me, she stood tall and said, he has access to whatever he wants. You know that better than any of us. I'll be at your service during the flight. I made Nescafe for you too. I'll bring it with hobby chocolate. I nodded to thank her. She was looking at me with curiosity. I came to Mashhad to remember things. The only person who knew it was Hossein. This was the beginning, hobby. The only chocolate I had during my adolescence. It doesn't taste special now, but to me, it was like golden sweet. I used to keep half of it for the night to keep the good taste in my mouth and sweeten my dreams. Until the end of the flight, Layden Tussi came to me only once. My last look didn't say my unsaid words. Or maybe she realized that I was not the right person to answer her questions. I should remember to talk to Hossein about Layton too. That I took out my notebook from my back. On a blank page, I wrote, 1, Layton 2. Airplane ticket 3. Ghazal. I closed my notebook. But I remembered the most important question. The one that should be, number 1. I reopened it and wrote on top of the page, Mehdi and the night we tried marijuana. Hossein's driver, Mr. Mahmoudi, was waiting for me at the airport. I recognized it was him from afar. I waved my hand at him and went toward him. He took my suitcase and greeted me warmly. How interesting. He did not have an accent. I asked him, how long have you been living in Mashhad? He looked at me. While he was putting the suitcase in the trunk, he said, it's been almost 30 years. I opened the door and got in. It was a gray Peugeot Persia. The rear seats were very clean and smelled like new. I said, so, you are originally from Mashhad? He said, no, but I have lived here since I knew myself. I didn't say anything else. I knew that Hossein doesn't like his employees to talk about their private lives, and this was one of his best and most efficient management ethics that I liked about him. I was silent until we arrived at the hotel, just watching outside. I have asked Hossein to book a room in Homa Hotel. It wasn't far from his house, and I could take a walk there every night. At least I got to see Armin a lot. It's been 2 years since I saw him, and I was excited to meet him. I woke up early in the morning. Nothing could be seen behind the hotel window except tall buildings. All the memories of the university came alive. Our hiking, professors. I couldn't even see Shoku building from up here. In the same building, I experienced the first letters of adolescence with Ghazal. The exam finished. Ghazal said, Raha, let's go have a hamburger or a sandwich and then go back home. I said, Ghazal, I can't. Hossein will come to pick me up. Ghazal said, let's go with Hossein. When he notices that we are talking together, he wouldn't come along and will take distance. Although I knew that this would never happen, I accepted. And that was the last time Ghazal suggested I go out. From that day onward, Ghazal took distance from me. She was right after what Hossein did. When the class finished and we came out, he was waiting outside. I said, Ghazal, and I want to go hiking. Without even looking at me, he said, it's late, maybe some other time. It was the first time Ghazal noticed that Hossein was speaking against my will. She said, Hossein, you too come with us. The weather is so nice. He took a look at Ghazal. I preferred he wouldn't say anything. He just said, Ghazal, maybe you want to go hiking and do many other things. It's not a good reason to stop Raha from following her rules and standards just to accompany you. I looked at him with anger and hatred. I said, Ghazal, please go home. I'll see you tomorrow. It's not a good time now. We will figure some other plan out tomorrow. Ghazal left. The following day, when I wanted to go out with her, she said, Raha, maybe it's not important for you, but I cannot let anyone force me and decide for me what to do and what not to do. After that night, little by little, she took distance. The following year, she moved from that neighborhood. I felt like it's been years that she didn't want to be with me anymore. She was the only friend I felt comfortable and safe talking to. Maybe because the situations of my family and hers were quite the same. Or maybe because she had an older brother too, and she'd understand. But his brother, Param, was nothing like Hossein. He took care of her, but not in a morbid way. He had his own life. Param was Arsham's best friend, but I don't know why he wasn't friends with Hossein. Hossein's friends are another long story. I should look at the diary of those years. I should probably go to Mom's house and take the old diary out from the cellar and read it. I feel I have forgotten so many memories. Memories that used to be a big part of my life. My cell phone rang. It was Hossein. He wanted to arrange to have cash at a restaurant, and I also had to go to his house. Chapter 5. I picked up the phone and said, let's go to the Taluk cash shop. He said, it's no longer at its previous location. Now, they have a bigger restaurant in Vakilabad. I said, it doesn't matter as long as it's still Hamid Talu who is welcoming us. Hossein laughed and said, yeah, with the same chubby face, he'll be standing at the door greeting his customers. I said, I'll be ready in half an hour. Come and pick me up. I got ready fast and went to the lobby, waiting for Hossein. I came sooner than expected. I wanted to tour the hotel, the lobby, and the yard. I got out of the hotel and walked on the paving. I tapped the tip of my white shoe on one of the tiny brownstones. I looked at the pool in the middle, between the hotel door and passing cars. They had planted leucanthemum in it and some tulips. It was not the tulip season, but it was beautiful. It didn't feel like those days, but it felt like home. I saw Hossein's car at the door. The doorman went to the car and opened the driver's door. Hossein must have told him something because the doorman came to the other side of the car and opened the front passenger's door and said, there you go, Madam Razai. I got in and thanked him. He smiled at us as we were leaving. Hossein cleaned up pretty well. He was happier than before, but his eyes were still sad. He passed the hotel's boulevard and entered the Sajid Boulevard. I was looking at the streets when he took my hand and said, welcome baby. I'm so happy that you're here. I laughed and I pulled my hand out of his. Then, I took my notebook out of my bag and said, Hossein, I want to ask you a few questions. Please do not dodge. If you don't want to answer, just tell me. Don't tell me bullshit. He looked at me and leaned his hand against the car window and held the steering wheel with his other hand. He said, as you wish, ma'am. but we want to go and have cash. I want your brain to work well so you can ask your questions and I can answer them correctly. I said, agreed. We got there. I got out of the car. I remembered my memories of Firdausi University and looked carefully around. While putting the car keys in his pocket, Hossein said, "We will take a walk and talk later. Let's go inside." Taluk cash shop windows are still steamed with their neon red entrance. We entered. Hamid Talou was standing right at the entrance. He shook hands with Hossein and greeted him warmly. I think he was a regular customer. Hossein introduced me and said, "Hamid, look at who had come to our city, Madam Raha Razai." Hamid Taloui is a 42-year-old man with a happy face and mustache that ended yellow. He was a little fat. He came to me and laughed with a white apron covered in green oil and stained. When you laughed, a hole appeared in his left cheek. Mom used to say, Hamid was unfortunate. His wife died so soon. He could be a family man. The story of how his wife died and he didn't remarry was still a secret to Mom and her friends, and they thought it was the dead wife's fault because she didn't let him talk. He guided us to the last table in the left corner, at the steamed window. The table was for 4 people. The worker took 2 extra chairs so that someone else would not sit next to us. They still brought forks and spoons inside a porcelain bowl, which was inside a tray, along with a container of lime juice in the shape of a plastic lime. Hossein sat, looked at me, and said, "It's still the same." I said, "The last time we came here, Arsham, Param, and Ghazal were here. Do you remember?" Hossein leaned back in his chair and said, "No, the last time, we were with Mehdi." I said, "You're right. I don't know why I don't remember anything about that trip." "One of my questions is about that trip, Hossein. I want you to tell me about Mehdi." "I don't remember anything." He sat straight and leaned toward me and said, "I will tell you everything, Raha, baby. It's not time to clean out my closet. You said that. So, I will only answer your vague questions." I said, "How come you realized that you should talk now?" Hossein looked at me with a sad face and said, "It's not time. And you didn't ask, by the way." I said, "The problem at Arose was probably much bigger than that. Mehdi told me that his life changed afterward, and after that trip, you got married. So, it must have been an important issue. Now, after 10 years, you have realized it's important again and that you must tell me. Am I your marionette?" Hamid came toward our table with plates full of oil and coca and sangak bread. He put a plate for each of us, smiled, and said, "I'm at your service, Mr. Engineer. Enjoy. Bon appetit." I thanked with a smile and started eating. It was so yummy and reminiscent of memories that I stopped talking. When we came out of Cash shop, I said, "Let's go to Firdausi University. I missed Ghazal." The last time I talked to her, she was in England. They had gone to Manchester with Pedram and her husband and mother. They had a simple life. As she put it, Pedram was not raised to the bait. I wanted to take a picture of the engineering faculty and send her a picture of the same bench we were sitting on while waiting for Hossein to pick us up. After I entered the university campus, I went straight to the dormitory. I stood by the swimming pool and the greenhouse, and I remembered the night we were stuck out of the dormitory. Ghazal, Shima, and I went to a hamburger shop near the bookstore, and it was too late. I called Hossein to give us a ride. I wanted to be with my friends in the dormitory. It was too late and the guard didn't let us in. It was impossible to persuade Hossein to let Ghazal and Shima stay the night in our place. So, we went behind the greenhouse and spent the night there. We escaped from the university through the back door when the sun rose like prison breakers. We went to the cash shop to have at least a breakfast, and then asked Hossein to come and pick us up and take us home so we could rest a bit. We decided to go to Kasanji for hiking the mountain and have fun. I stood in front of the greenhouse and took a selfie with my cell phone, then sent it to Ghazal on WhatsApp. She answered every once in a blue moon, but that was good enough. The moment she came online, it was as if a star was shining from the memory. Hossein was standing beside me. He lit a cigar and said quietly, "Where do you want to go?" I didn't look at him and said, "I want to be alone, Hossein. Give me an hour. I want to be alone here with my memories. Then we will go to your place to meet Hilda." He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "As you wish. I'll tell Hilda and I'll pick you up in an hour. Have fun with yourself." I put my hand on his and stared at the dormitory buildings. It was a 3-kilometer road that you would have to walk all the way if you did not take the bus. I always wanted to go to Shahid Beheshti University just because I could experience a dormitory, but I couldn't. After marrying Sohail, I went to Tehran, to Shahid Beheshti University, but I was married and I couldn't go to the dormitory. I had to be with Mr. Husband, and I could not experience all the things I wanted. Ever since I can remember, there was either Dad, Hossein, or Sohail. I hear my SMS notification. It was Hossein. "It's been a quarter an hour that I have been waiting for you. Hilda and Armin are waiting for you whenever your memory game is over." I went to Hossein's car. I got in. He was waiting for me and looked at me with a smile like those days and said, "Was it fun?" I looked at him and said, "Hossein, Hilda does not accept me. Why?" "Enough that you have paid all your attention to me, or there is a reason I need to know." He turned around, put his gear on the drive, and started driving. He was looking out, but he wasn't there. I understood this from the way he spoke. He said, "Hilda has issues with our relationship. She still thinks that my love for you is legendary." I said, "Is that so?" Hossein did not look at me. He wasn't even surprised. He said, Raha, I don't care what Hilda says. The important thing is that you are the priority of my life. I said, would you ignore Armin because of me? I wouldn't. I don't have a choice, because I know how dependent Hilda is on Armin, and I owe her that. Armin is Hilda's only asset in living with me. I said, and you? He turned to me, and I looked away, and started looking through the window. The trees in the Vakilabad Boulevard were all tall and beautiful in a coquetry manner like those old days I was a student. He said, you are worth everything. I said nothing until we arrived at his place. We entered Bahar Alley. We parked in front of the house. Hossein didn't use his keys. He rang the bell instead. Hilda's voice was sad. Come quietly. Armin is sleeping. I looked at Hossein in surprise. Why would he sleep at this time of the day? He didn't answer the question in my eyes, opened the door, and guided me inside. Inside the courtyard on the right was a large garden full of boxwoods of the same size. On the far side of the garden, there were identical brick red vases full of red geraniums. To the left was a ramp to the parking lot, and gold tiles were installed on the walls of the parking lot. Right in the middle of the wall was written, nothing. I looked at Hossein and said, did you design this yourself? He said, yes. I said, it's very pretty. He said, I lost everything and I had nothing left. I wrote this not to forget about it. I said, did it happen recently, or was it like this from the beginning? We reached the glass door. He opened the door. We waited for Hilda to open the wooden door. There was a green bench and a small golden table between the two doors. A big chandelier was hanging over the table. It was on and it smelt like burnt wood. Hilda had a lot of taste in interior design, and that was what differentiated her from all the other girls around Hossein. But as long as I remember, he never had a girlfriend, because he was always busy studying and taking care of me. When he talked about Hilda for the first time, Mom and I jumped on the opportunity to encourage him to get married, because he was too much into studying. Now that I remember, I had to talk to Hossein. Why should we jump on the opportunity? Hossein used to say he likes to work. He didn't like the responsibility of married life. But Mom and I didn't let him talk. After that trip, we went to Shandai's, where he asked me, Raha, do you think I should get married? I can't remember that day. I laughed and said, I shouldn't be telling you what to do. But if you are ignoring marriage just to study, stop it. How long are you going to stick to the classes and the university? I don't know Hilda, but if she is your choice, I know you. And Hossein got married. I had to ask him, what do you want, Hossein? This was one of the items we had to talk about before it was too late. Hilda greeted us with a pair of blue jeans and a pink sweater. She had become a little thin and her face was as simple and serious as always. Her lipstick was pink and she smelt her usual scent. She greeted us and went aside to let us pass and go inside. At the entrance, there was a large golden round table. The table was wood-carved. It was really elegant and beautiful. There was a big vase full of pink orchids on the table that made the entrance look nicer. I couldn't help myself. I said, "They are so beautiful, Hilda. It gives us the best feeling when we enter the house." She didn't even turn around. As she was walking to the end of the hallway, she said, "Thank you, Ms. Raha. Come in." Hilda went to the kitchen at the end of the hallway to the right. Hossein and I went left to the living room. It was a not too large room with 2 dark blue sofas. We entered a tall window facing the courtyard window decorated with a dark blue silver curtain. Next to each sofa was a small silver round table with a moon-shaped lampshade on each. Both were on. On one of the walls was a painting by Hilda, a sunset. Beneath the painting was a silver console with a photo of their small family, Hilda, Hossein, and Armin. I looked at Hossein, who was standing behind the window, with his back to me. I said, "This house is not at all like the house of people who want to immigrate. Everything is in place and tidy and beautiful as if you are going to throw a party." He turned to me and said, "She sold the house, with all the furniture." The couple who bought the house was so attracted to the decoration that they would not bring any furniture. I sat on the sofa and put my bag next to the sofa and sighed loudly and said, "Which city are they going to? Did you find a place for them?" Hossein also came and sat next to me on the sofa and said, "I bought a house for them in Calgary, but first, she goes to one of her friends, Sohaila. Remember we were newly married, she was going to Canada." I said, "I do not remember well." "But the same friend who was sitting in your place at your wedding?" Hossein burst into laughter and said, "Yes, she made it easier for me." I said, "I was so angry at her. I had prepared that place for you too, and Hilda was with her friend throughout the wedding." Hossein took out a cigarette. I told him, "Don't smoke in the house, you know how sensitive she is." He said, "I'll go to the balcony." "I'm waiting for her to come, then I'll go to the balcony." I said, "No, I will go to the kitchen." Hossein went to the balcony and I, to the kitchen. Hilda was pouring tea in 2 beautiful brown cups on a pretty tray. Beside each cup, there was rock candy. She was looking down. I knew that she is looking at me. I said, "Why so suddenly?" She looked up and said, "Raha, why would you, who know everything, say that?" I said, "Hilda, don't talk like that for once. Speak without sarcasm. Believe it or not, I don't know anything. After Daddy's death, I took my distance from Hossein. Do you remember his awkward behavior at the funeral? It was bothering me." Hilda looked at me with sarcasm and said, "Raha, I am leaving. But maybe it's time for you to pull yourself together and talk to your brother." She went to the living room with the tray of tea, but I was nailed there. Pull yourself together. What was that supposed to mean? What did I do wrong to Hilda that I have to take care of it now? I went to the living room and called Hilda loudly. She turned around and put her finger on her nose and said, "Why are you shouting? You will wake Armin up." I apologized and said, "I don't understand, Hilda. Would you please be more specific?" The balcony door opened and Hossein came in. Hilda sat on the blue couch and said, "Hossein, will you explain everything to Raha?" Hossein, who seemed to have entered into a one-sided conversation, did not even look at Hilda and said, "We'll talk, Raha." I was even more confused. I said, "Hilda, I have always liked you, and I have always told Hossein that you are his priority. Hossein feels responsible for me in a morbid way. I understand how painful it is. I am a woman myself and I understand that family's overprotection can be irritating, but I could do nothing about it. I tried. You know how soon I got married." Hilda got up and went to the balcony. She paused a bit. She took the handle in her hand and opened the door, and as she went out she uttered under breath, "Raha, thank you for coming, but I wish you did not come. I am going to get rid of one-sided love. I hope Hossein understands love one day, when it is not too late." She closed the door on the balcony and stood in front of the fence facing the room, put her hand in her pants pocket, and lit a cigarette. I was still surprised. Hilda smoking? Hossein's coldness, my presence. I got up and picked up my bag. I looked at Hossein, who pretended to be busy in the corner of the room with his cell phone, but I knew that all his attention was on me. I said, "Hossein, I'm going out. I need some air." He said, "I'll come with you." I looked up into his eyes and said, "You are not coming with me. I want to be alone. I have to sort things out with you on this trip. I am tired of your stupid games. Of your secrets. I don't understand you, Hossein. I don't." Hilda finished smoking and came inside. She saw me leaving and said, "Raha, please don't come to the airport. I know you came to see us, but don't. You better not see Armin either. Let him say goodbye to you with the same memory of 2 years ago, so he doesn't miss you." She looked at me coldly and passed me. I was so angry that I did not know what to do. I moved behind her, put my hand on her shoulder, and said, "Hilda, there was nothing I could do." As her back was at me, she said, "Just go, Raha, go. You shouldn't have come. You opened my wounds. I told Hossein I did not want to see you. He did not even give you the message. Go and build your life and forget you ever knew me." Hossein, who had been silent until now, came forward and confronted Hilda. He wanted to say something, but I looked at his eyes to stop him. I looked at him like I looked at him when Ghazal stopped talking to me. He didn't say anything else. Hilda passed by Hossein with a grin and went to the kitchen. I went to the door and Hossein was left alone in the middle of the hallway. Ever since Mom moved to Tehran, her house, our house, has remained intact, and this was the most important part of traveling to Mashhad. Although the house was empty, I could not bear to stay there all week. The house was empty for about 2 years. It did not smell of life. I had to go there and review the memories and maybe find a clue that answers my questions. I had to be alone with my memories to find a way to make things better. I was heading there when my cell phone rang. I looked at Nahal and Parisa's smiling face. It was Sohail. And he was the last person I would ever want to talk to. I answered. I couldn't hear him. I tried with the other ear and pressed the cell phone closely to my ear to hear him better. His voice was calm. He was in a quiet place. I didn't have to press the cell phone to my ear. He said, "Did you arrive safely? Did you see Armin and Hilda?" I said impatiently, "Yeah, I saw Hilda, but Armin was sleeping." I told myself to keep my family problems to myself and didn't say anything about what Hilda said. "Are the kids all right? Did you get back?" He said, "Yes. But your mom is coming to Mashhad too. I wanted you to hear it from me, so you won't be shocked." I said, "She's probably coming to say goodbye." He didn't say anything. I thought he must have called for something important. He didn't used to call me in the middle of the day, from home. He must have skipped work. I said, "Are you at home or the company?" "Sohail?" "I can't hear anyone else," that he said. "You got a visitor, Raha." "What do you mean, I had a visitor? I'm not a prisoner." He said, "Don't be silly. I mean, he came to see you." I said, "Who was it?" "Without notice?" "For what?" He said, "Mr. Mehdi Marabi. He came with a basket of flowers to apologize." When I opened the door, he was shocked. I said, "I'm shocked too." "What did he want?" "Apologize for what? What the hell does he do in Tehran anyway?" He said, he apologized a lot and said he was on a one-day trip and wanted to meet you too. He didn't call because he knew you would say no. He paused and asked, "Who is Marabi, Raha?" I said, "Hossein's friend." He then continued to ask more questions. What was he doing at our door? I said, "You should have asked him, I'm in Mashhad. If I wanted to meet him, I would have met him here in our city." He said, "I'm not saying that you wanted to meet him." I interrupted him and said loudly, "What do you want to say, Sohail?" "I'm going to Mom's house, and I am going to turn my cell phone off." He said, "Raha, I know that you have been thinking for a long time. I know that you want to make a serious decision, but I love you, and I'd do anything to make you happy." I said, "Anything?" He said, "Anything, but in one condition." I said, "With you, there's always a but." I knew it. "No, Sohail. No conditions. You never do anything for my happiness. You want the shop window to be preserved for 10 years, and I do not see this. I am not a decorator. He said, let's talk properly. When I was in the villa with Shaheen, I heard something. I asked, about? He said, Hossein. That I said, oh, I see. Because you can't fight with Hossein, you came to me. Why don't you call himself? Why are you trying to tell me what you have to tell Hossein? He remained silent and said, Raha, I love you. I paused and said, anything else? He said, Raha, I love you. He made me say it. It slipped my lips, but I don't love you anymore. There was silence, like the gray of the sky before a heavy rain. Like sad mornings of north of Iran, where the drizzle on tree leaves smells like orange blossom, like fog, where one can't see in front of oneself. It faded away. The air between the two of us seemed to be over. I knew that it would be over. That meant that I had to start breathing in another air. When I got to Mom's house, I opened the door with the keys. I closed the door and leaned against the door. I closed the door and took a deep breath. The garden was all dry. The red, yellow, and pink damask roses in the garden were all dried. The pomegranate tree by the yard was still alive. It was as if it was proud to show the garden soil that its roots would not die easily. The pool in the middle of the yard, with its blue tiles, without water, looked like a rock whose snow had been drenched for years, and its color turned black. Around the pond, identical clay pots, without flour, and with hardened soil, had stolen the soul of the house. I walked down the narrow path to the basement. When I reached the first step, I looked at the door lock and looked at my keychain. Only Mom had the key to this lock. I did not know what was hidden in this basement. But whatever it was, there was a whole lot of memory on its shelves. There was still a sour smell from the edge of the stairs. Like the thymes and pickles and salt pickles were added to the shelves so the whole family could come and take their share and leave. I passed the basement stairs and entered the hallway. The big mirror decorated with cotton was still hanging on the wall in front of it, and next to it was a large chandelier. A welcome sign. The smell of the house was the same as the smell of the mother. The smell of school. It smelled like the forbidden girlhood. The smell of Ghazal's goodbye party. The smell of terrain. The smell of Hossein. Arsham. Param and Mehdi Marabi. I opened the door and entered. All living room sofas were duly covered. I felt the smell of sadness on my face. Sadness means that life in this house has been stopped for years. I went straight up the stairs in the middle of the hall and reached the upper floor. From the middle corridor upstairs, I could see Hossein's room, my mom's, and mine all together. I decided to go to my room first. They gave me the middle room to be safe on both sides. Although Hossein was with us at home for only 2 years and soon got a house for himself, those 2 years were enough for his room to be my dream room. The room in the corner belonged to Hossein. His room was facing the mountain. The mountains were visible from his window, and you could watch the sunrise every day. When you opened the window, the smell of dirt wafted into the room, and sometimes the scent of flower growing through the tiles behind the house. Her curtains were all white and thin. His room was always bright because he should not hide behind superstitions and jealousy. It had a large balcony with a table, armchairs, and a red umbrella when they wanted to be alone or have a special party. I remember always going there in the evenings, and he would hardly let me sit in his armchair on his balcony and read a book or look at the mountains and take a deep breath and feel free of Mom and Hossein when they picked on me. His bed was still intact. Under the window is a simple black double bed with lilac bedding and a thick white blanket with lilac cushions, the color of the wall behind her bed. Ordered, ironed and fragrant. Above his bed on the jasmine wall, the word love was so beautiful and big that I wanted to sit and look at it. Next to his bed were 2 small cupboards, each with a very small golden lampshade with a light bulb. His desk was on the other side of the room, next to the balcony. A simple black desk and its library covered the entire wall in front of it. There was only a reading lamp on his desk, and the drawers under his desk were all tidy and intact. I went to the drawers and opened them. It was always locked, but now I could easily open it. The first drawer was arranged in the same orderly space, and it was a small notebook. Surprised, I picked up the blue notebook and opened it. For me, who has entrusted you to the house of my heart, it was beautifully written. The next pages were a few phone numbers and business appointments. The booklet was from distant years. There was no trace of memory or no answer to my questions. It was a work notebook, and that's why he was here. I closed the drawer and opened the second drawer. There was a small album on the drawer's right side, and the rest was empty. Like a house where no one has lived for years. The album was his birthday present. Arsham had given him as a gift. The first photo was of himself and Arsham on one of their teenage birthdays. The rest of the album was me and Hossein and my childhood playmates. The album was not that thick, as if most of its photos had been removed. The third drawer was empty. There was nothing in it. Nothing at all. I went to his library, which was tidy and organized. The books were based on the author's name. The Divan of Hafez, Candide, Optimism, 8 books, My Uncle, Napoleon, The Enchanted Soul, Drunkard Morning. My books were there too. There was dust sitting in the library. I took a smooth serenade and opened it. Something written on it. For love, only the heart is enough, to beat with enthusiasm, to write from the end to the beginning of the word. Hossein, Spring 1998. I flipped through the book. The pages were full of writing. I remember the first time he gave me the book to read. I was standing in the same room on the balcony. He gave me the book and said, "Raha, read it. This is a book for a lifetime. It introduces emotions correctly." I took it from him and finished it that night. I did not understand much of Hossein's notes. I put the book where it was. I found a photo frame above the library. It was a photo of Hossein and Arsham and I. The photo was taken at Arsham's goodbye party. I well remember that night when I returned home, I had a big fight with Hossein, who could not be like a brother to me. Arsham had thrown a party because he had passed the entrance exam for the master's degree. I also came from Tehran to attend this party, and as usual, I was alone, without Sohail. All my old friends were there and I was excited. I had not seen them for a long time. Hilda was supposed to come, but she didn't. I still do not know the reason. It was a big party. As Arsham and Param saw me, they came to me to hug each other, as always. But Hossein did not allow them. He was like an obstacle in front of Arsham and me. Arsham had assured Hossein many years ago that I am just like a sister, like Ghazali. But still, it was not enough. Arsham did not care about Hossein and overcame the obstacle. He respectfully took his hand and said, "My dear brother, let us see our little sister for a while." Hossein's eyes spoke a lot. This time he allowed me not to leave the party. I gave Arsham his gift and whispered in his ear, "Take me away from this person, Arsham. I'm going crazy." Arsham led me to his room to open the gift alone. Now I remember seeing Layden Tussi there. She was doing her hair in Arsham's room. Arsham went to Layden, kissed her cheek, turned to me, and introduced Layden as his new friend. Although they had only been together for a while, Layden did not come to me at all that night and just greeted me in the room. Arsham opened my gift in front of Layden and Hossein entered uninvited. Arsham did not care, but Layden left the room and looked at me as she left and said, "I had heard a lot about you and your brother. I'm glad I met you in person." She passed Hossein with a push and Arsham seemed to have not heard at all. He opened his gift. Because he loved handicrafts, wood, and marquetry, I had bought him a marquetry chandelier with the shape of a profiled face with closed eyes and pursed lips. She had her hands under her chin. The hand was the base of the chandelier. To buy a gift, I searched for a long time to find something he likes. And I saw the joy in his eyes. Hossein went to Arsham and put his hands forward and said, "Raha always has a unique taste." He put his hand on Arsham's shoulder and said, "Raha, take a picture." And I did. Tirana came in to take everyone to meet the guests. Hossein asked her, "Tirana, take a picture of Arsham, Raha, and me." And this is the historical picture. My face was smiling, but my eyes were crying. Arsham puts on a smile and Hossein seems to be satisfied. Tarain and Arsham went to the guests. Hossein was holding my hand. He had something to say. I turned my face to him and said, "Don't say anything. We'll stay for 2 hours, and then take me straight to the airport. I want to go back to Tehran." And that night after the party, I promised myself that I would not go to another party with Hossein. I put the picture where it was, and got out of Hossein's room. I did not have time to review the memories one by one. Each part of my memories had a feeling reminiscent of Hossein, who, of course, called it attention, and I, control. I took my phone out of my bag and went to my room. I sat on the bed and opened the messages. Mehdi Marabi had sent a message, "Raha, I am sorry. I went to your house without notice. I'm sorry." I did not answer. I had a lot of work with Mehdi Marabi. Hossein had sent a message, "I am at my mom's house. Whenever you want, let's go out for a dinner." I raised my head and looked at the sky. It was black and I was wasting time. Hossein's message was sent an hour ago. I called him. He picked up quickly and said, "Are you all right? Did you have fun?" I said, "Can we not go out tonight? I want to rest in the hotel. Let's go to Guchen Villa tomorrow." Hossein paused a bit and said, "Why there?" I said, "I'll tell you tomorrow." Ever since I got married, about 10 years ago, I have tried to make it clear to Hossein that being his sister is not a priority, and that I am now an independent woman. I did not know Sohail. A friend of Mom had introduced him. But I decided to come to Tehran from Mashhad, and the only way was marriage. Satisfying Mom and Dad was like an apple pie, but Hossein did not listen to me at all. Sohail was a gentleman. He spoke little and was active. The first time I saw him, I did not feel anything, but I knew that feeling could be created, and my situation was not such that I could think of love and friendship. As long as he had the basic living conditions, I thought he was perfect. He had a steady job. He had a family and, most importantly, was introduced. When you are about to choose at a young age, your criteria also shrink. When I said yes to Sohail, Hossein went crazy. He argued with Mom and Dad for several days that Raha should first study and finish her studies and then get married. He insisted on Mom and Dad so much that Sohail had to wait a year. We were so cautious during this time that I do not remember a single memory. When I defended the thesis and the master result was announced, I remember shouting out of joy. The key to my liberation was from Mashhad and Hossein and Mom and Dad. I married Sohail in the hope of liberation. At that time, my world was so small that I did not even think about what lifelong commitment means and how much I would become more overwhelmed with responsibility. I had not learned that real life means sharing most of the moments. To escape from Hossein and Mom and Dad, I entered a new world for which I was not ready. I slowly got used to Sohail and his indifference. with Tehran and the busyness of its days. But I enjoyed every moment of studying in a quiet environment where Hossein's car was not waiting for me when my classes were over. After each class, I did not have to explain why I should stay longer or when I would return. This pleasure of freedom was with me throughout my studies. Sohail was a faint member of my life, who was just there. For hours, I wanted to talk about the class I was coming from and my new plans. Sohail always sat and listened. But he only listened. If I asked him to repeat my words, he could not. Not that he doesn't want to do it. At least, that was what he said. During my studies at Tehran University, Hossein was always commuting between Tehran and Mashhad. He wouldn't stay at my place. He tried to take classes around the weekend so he could spend the night in Lavasan Villa. In my senior year, he founded a ship transport company in Mashhad. The company he founded under my name, for me. He wanted to develop it and transfer it to Tehran. He introduced me as his consultant in his projects. He introduced me as the CEO. I went to several classes to run the business better. Management classes at Tehran University of Technology and Tehran Studies Center. I wanted to be happy with the degree I was getting and to convince myself that I took over the job myself, not because of Hossein and the things he did for me. The trip to Guchen Villa was also for the same company and its contract with a German company. Hossein had made all the appointments. As Mashhad was not a city that attracts tourists like Shiraz and Isfahan, Hossein invited all the delegates to the villa after official negotiations. The same so-called villa where I went with Hossein, and Mehdi came as a financial advisor and also a translator. The same trip that I wanted to prove to Hossein for the first time that I have the authority and can intervene in my own life and decisions, and I do not need his permission. Hilda had packed her bags. I was sitting in Hossein's car. They wanted to take airport taxis. Armin came from afar. I promised not to get out of the car. It was hard, but not as hard as I thought. Perhaps these 2 years of distance had made things easier. Hossein was standing at the door of the house, waiting for Hilda, holding Armin's hands in his. He bent down and kissed Armin's cheek and hugged him. It was a heartbreaking scene. It is as if you have uprooted the seedlings and want to carefully put them in a plastic bag to implant them elsewhere. Armin was lost like a small seedling in Hossein's arms. I took the phone out of my bag to keep myself busy. If it took a little longer, I would get out. The thought had crossed my mind, though. Hilda was leaving and I was not supposed to get an order from her, but the only thought I had was Armin himself. After 2 years, it is easier for Armin not to miss me than when I met him before he left. It's as if I was never there. Just like for Hilda. I didn't even know I wasn't there for Hilda. But I didn't even try to be there for her. Now that I think Hossein was as supportive as ever and in control of everything, I subconsciously forgot that I have to take control of the people who belong to Hossein. I had 3 messages from Sohail and 1 message from Mehdi Marabi. I opened Sohail's messages first. 3 same messages seemed to make sure his message arrived. Like being in my life, repeating himself to ensure he was in my life. A presence like my own for Hilda and Armin. I realized for a moment how hard it was. Sohail played my role in a very distant relationship, but Sohail was supposed to be my companion. I have to settle my relationship with Sohail after returning to Tehran. For now, I have to put my thoughts in order, and in the middle of this, I was stuck between the secret of Mehdi and Hussein. Sohail's message was as simple and numb as ever. Hi. Nahal misses your voice. I want to call you sometime tonight to make a video call. When's the best time to call? Take care. I look forward to seeing you. He had sent this message 3 times. Without the smallest change. He had copied and pasted it. The 4th message was from Mehdi. 15 minutes ago. I opened it. Raha, I am heading Guchin Road. Sorry, I'm telling you by message. Hossein asked me to see you tonight. It was as if I was numb. I read the message a few times and I repeated it for myself. I didn't expect anything less from Hossein. How many times had he consulted me in his decision-makings? Even tonight. The last night Hilda and Armin were here, he didn't stop messing around with my life. I put the cell phone back in my bag. Hilda came out and locked the door and handed the keys to Hossein. She was standing there talking to Hossein, but her lips didn't move. Instead, she stared at me, nodded, and got in the taxi. Hossein had a bowl full of water and pink rose petals. As she was leaving, he poured the water with petals behind her back. His eyes were sad. An old sadness. I got out of the car and hugged him. He cried in my arms. And this was the first time he was in my arms with an open heart, and he cried. I touched his hair and cried along with him. He was whispering, maybe with himself. Raha, you have no idea what happened to me. You know nothing. I'm dying of loneliness. I'm dying of not saying all the things I kept as a secret in my heart. I am dying, Raha. I put my hand on his face, and with both hands, I held his face in front of me and said, My darling Hossein, talk to me. What is this big pain pounding on your chest? Why don't you talk to me, my dearest? Hossein looked at me. In the depths of his gaze was a deep and new feeling. I grew up with this look. The moment Dad died, Hossein was in my arms. The day I got married, I was in Hossein's arms. The day Nahal was born, Hossein was the first person to come to meet me. The night Parisa was going to be born, when I was in so much pain, Hossein took me to the hospital. His hands were in mine throughout the way, and I was pressing them because of the pain. The day Ziba left Iran, I went to the airport with Hossein and I cried in his arms. The day Ghazal left, Hossein and I went to say goodbye, and after that, we went to Tuchel fruit juice shop and I burst into laughter. He said so much nonsense, and he made me laugh and laugh and laugh. Hossein was with me at every second of my adolescence. All the nights I was studying for the exams, when I was going to school, when I was going to Language Institute, when I went to the university, he was always with me. In fact, when I was buying stuff for my marriage, Hossein was with me and I knew his eyes and what his look meant. I read Hossein without even reading him. But the depth of this look was different and unreadable. He wiped his tears and went to the car. I was just surprised. As I wanted to go to the car, my cell phone rang. I took a look at it. It was Shaheen. Shaheen, Suri's friend, was calling me. I didn't get so much complexity. I couldn't answer the phone. I went to the car. As I was getting in, I said, Hossein, before we move, you have to answer some of my questions. He didn't look at me, but he started the car. I opened the door of the car. Suddenly he turned to me and said, Raha, it's time for you to know and understand. I wanted to get off the car, but he took my hand and said, it's too late for not hearing. Sit. I said, what is Shaheen saying? Why would you invite Mehdi to the day the secret of our life is going to be revealed? Why would Shaheen call me? He said, Shaheen and Sohail were in Lavasan Villa. They found a movie and a picture which is about you and me. I laughed out loud. I said, how interesting. My husband and his friend found a picture of my brother and me in my brother's villa, and he is about to talk to me about it. Are you joking? Aren't you tired of controlling me so much? Hilda and Armin left you because you only pay attention to my life. Isn't that enough? He said, the film is about me. About my childhood. A film that you haven't even seen. Dad gave it to me, so I destroyed it. But I kept it. The picture is about the childhood of me and you. He was confused. I was so tired to put the whole puzzle together. I mean, I wanted to know the end of the story. I wanted to wake up. I hated this unsolvable puzzle. I hated that astrology program that started all of this. I said, are you going to talk or shall I call Shaheen and Mehdi to tell me what the hell is going on here? I'm your sister. Silly. I am everything you have. The apple of your heart. You and I are of the same blood. We are the same life. What is this strange feeling you have? Why are you protecting me so much? Hossein, it's me, Raha, your one and only. Your only sister. Look at me. Hossein, I'm tired. Finish this game. Tell me what's going on in your mind. I want to talk to you about my future. My voice was sobbing, but I kept going. I had to continue non-stop. I knew Hussein. He would suddenly start talking. I had a way with him. Hussein, darling. I want to start. I want to come to Mashhad. I want to come to work in the plant with you. I want to take over the office you registered and start working. I want to bring Nahal and Parisa with me to stay with us. I need your help, your love. Why don't you let go of a 10-year-old secret? Damn Mehdi and whatever happened that night. He has decided not to confess his love and he kept silent for years. Who cares? Damn Shaheen too. Men like exhumation of memories. They are just a bunch of busybodies. Damn Sohail. I want to leave separately from him. I want to run away from his indifference. Oh, darling. You are killing me with the tears in your eyes. Do you want me to suffer? It's me, Hossein, Raha. Look how much I love you. Am I not your only sister? Hossein shouted, You're not. You are not. You are not my sister. And he burst into tears. I was shocked. I was silent for a few seconds and then started laughing. Nervous and loud laughter. The laughter was out of anger. I said, I can't handle this. Not this. Believe me, I can't. He raised his voice. He shouted all these years. I could hear his voice. You are not. You never were. You should have known this, but Dad didn't want you to. He said, why should she and I accept it? I was a child. I was 10 years old when Dad left my mom. He had just got to know Shola, your mom. I was with him. He used to say, although you are not my son, you are the only fruit of my love. Dad worshipped my mom, and that was why even though she had me, he was with my mom. When Mom left without a word, I was left alone with Dad, and I didn't know how to call him. Should I call him Dad or not yet? The day you were born, Dad and Shola both asked me to promise not to tell her. They didn't want the only daughter of Mr. Razai, the engineer, to be bothered by anything. That day, I promised Dad to protect you. To keep an eye on you, so nothing bad happens to you. I did it. But you were so sweet. You were full of love. You were the kindness itself. The only person on earth that I had, and you loved me for me. Raha, I didn't want it. I don't know what happened. One day, I looked up and realized that you are my love, my life. I thought I would forget about this love easily, but it didn't happen. Every day, I grew more and more in your love. I went to Dad. He was as indifferent as always. He said, "Don't be silly, Hossein. You don't even know what love is. She is your sister." I told him I needed help and that I was dying. He said, if Raha gets married, you'll feel better. But it didn't happen. It was like a long nightmare. It was probably a dream, and I woke up in the middle of one of Aunt Fariba's stories. Aunt Fariba always loved telling stories about hell and misery. Maybe I woke up in one of those stories. Aunt Fariba was going to shake me, and I'm going to wake up, and I'll be back at my world again. I was in Mashhad. I was playing with my old memories, with Hossein. We are on Guchen Road. We were heading to the villa, to play stupid games again. Hossein was joking. He was testing me. Like the other night, he knocked at my bedroom door in the middle of the night and told me that there was a fox at the door of our house. When I came downstairs, I saw Arsham in a stupid fox costume. He and Hossein started laughing. Now, Hossein was wearing some other person's costume. He wanted to test me. Was that even possible? Hossein? Loving me? Well, I loved him too. He was my only brother. What was he saying? Who let him take my Hossein away from me? I was short of breath. And I started coughing hard and bursting. I said, stop. I need to get some air. Hossein sobbed and said, Raha, darling, it's a 10-minute drive to the villa. Wait till then and then say whatever you want. I said, Hossein, stop. I can't breathe. Stop it, degenerate. Stop it, shameless. Hossein, you made my life a living hell. Stop it, Hossein. I can't breathe in your air. Stop the car, Hossein. Hossein pulled over. Villa was near there. I told him to go, that I will come on foot. That I don't want to see a sight of him. That he should leave right away. That my bag is in the car, but I don't need my cell phone. To give me some minute to digest what he said. To get away from my sight. I shouted so loud that he didn't come out of the car. He drove slowly. I sat right there on the asphalt. I took my head between my hands and cried loudly. I became the girl who, in a fictional story, disembarks from a rocket in the heart of another planet. I could not breathe. It was as if I did not know at all how to do it. I could not see around me. The whole sky was so strange that I felt like the same astronaut who had walked away from Earth and realized he was nothing at all. From the top of the new planet, I could see the Earth so small that I felt myself weakening moment by moment. There was no sound coming from my breath. It was as if I was holding my heart in my hand, and I was forcing it to beat. I said, maybe death is like that. Maybe I'm dead, and I'm hearing these things. Aunt Fariba used to say the first night a person dies, he hears vague voices. It must be the first night I died. Life has become so absurd and ridiculous from above. I must have gone back to the purgatory world, the world in Dante's book. Hossein and I used to laugh at it. Oh, Hossein. What happened? What do I do with your absence? Why did it happen? Wake me up. Wake me up. A hand on my shoulder shook me. I got scared and screamed involuntarily and went back. Mehdi came closer and said, Raha, Hossein is so stupid. He doesn't know that he shouldn't have talked to you like that. I looked at him. I said, you knew, and you didn't say a word. Raha, I said, aren't you ashamed of yourselves? You killed Hossein and me. Was it the time? Why would you say it now? Mehdi was coming forward slowly, and I was going backward with every step he took. I said, don't approach me. What else do you want? He said, Raha, you are shocked. Let's go to the villa. I'll take you there myself. I shook my hands in the air and shouted, Go Mehdi. Why do you guys think there should be someone with me at all times? Was that the secret 10 years ago? Now that Hossein is not here, you came along. Go away. Mehdi didn't say a word. He just stood there and watched me. He said, you say whatever you want. Just get in the car, I'll take you to Mashhad. If you felt bad, there will be a hospital close by. You are pale. You are shaking. I shouted, so what? You want to take me to the hospital to get well again? Do you realize what has just happened to me, or do you want me to tell you? I sat on the ground and put my hands on my head and I cried out loud. Mehdi approached me little by little and sat in front of me. He wasn't saying a word. I could only hear his slow sobs. I said, what are you looking at? Are you crying at my misfortune or yours? Mehdi, where were you in this puzzle? Why didn't you show your manhood and come and save me sooner? At least you should have stopped Hossein from revealing the secret at this point. What's going to happen now? Do you think I will turn my feelings off and turn another feeling on? Do you get what is going on here? Mehdi did not say anything. She was crying, but to no avail. I felt like I was slowly freezing inside. Like water that is put in the freezer and slowly freezes. And suddenly, they take it out of the freezer and shake the mold and it cracks from the middle. My heart was cracked. I froze. I could feel my feelings going out. I felt a piece of me slowly bend over and I was suffocating it with my own hands. I felt like I was melting from within. I felt them all. I was standing on the grave of my feelings. The nightmare was true. I was dead, not myself, but all my heart and emotions. I got up. Mehdi also got up. Hossein stood far away and watched. I went to him. Hossein also walked towards me. His gaze became strange. Stranger than a stranger. He opened his arms to hug me. I lowered his hands and said, I do not want to see you anymore. Not now, not ever. You killed the concept of love in me. You are a perfect example of a selfish and one-sided feeling. I do not want to see you anymore. Forget you knew Raha. If I see you, rest assured. I will do what I ought to do today. I do not want to see you or anybody related to you. If somewhere your eyes lay on me, just go. Now, give me the car key, I'll go back myself. I'll leave the car in the hotel parking lot and give the keys to the receptionist. He put his hand in his pocket and handed over the keys. He was looking at me, but not saying anything. I knew that something was dead inside me, because I can't feel anything else. He wanted to say something, but I interrupted him. Hossein, I don't want to hear your voice again. Never, ever. And I left to start over. A new start with a dead body, a dead soul and a dead heart. The end.